to talk about growth, how you grow your business through expanding business with existing customers. What would happen to your retention rates if you focused more on expansion rather than retention? And let's hear me out. So we're going to do a little bit of stuff here on the whiteboard. We talk about acquisition, initial acquisition. This is all part of that Dare to Grow model. Remember, we acquire a customer for the first time once. You don't acquire a customer for the first time many times. You acquire a customer for the first time once. So we acquire a customer, and then we move into this growth cycle. So retention plus expansion. That's part of that Dare to Grow model. Well, what happens after we acquire the customer? What is the first thing that we need to do in this little period between customer acquisition and expanding the customer? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to implement. I don't care if you're a SaaS company or you're a construction company or you're a services company. You've got to implement. You implement something. You deliver something into the organization. This is typically that initial onboarding that you go through. So there's an onboarding process that you go through when you do your initial implementation. And when you do that initial implementation, one of the first questions that you should be asking in this part of the process is, what do we need to accomplish here in the short term in order for you to be able to communicate inside your organization that this is successful, that this is working? So what I want to look at here is, how do we accelerate speed to impact? Or another way to look at this is time to value. What's that first value point that we need to hit in that first 90 days with any engagement? And how do we design for it? So if we know what that value point is, we can design backward. Remember, we've done this a couple of different times. A, B, C, D, to get to that value point. And we can check ourselves to make sure that we're making it through each of these individual gates. And we can set up a system or a process. It could be communication, email, newsletter, could be meeting, could be a number of different things. But we set up some conversion things that are going to look like call plans that help us convert between A to B, B to C, C to D. When we get to that value point, the next question we want to ask is, if we've done what we've said, did we do what we said we were going to do? Which is the confirmation step in the catalyst sale process. Did we do what we said we were going to do? If we did do what we said we we're going to do, where else can we do more? This is where we start to look at expansion inside the existing account. Are there other end users that we should bring on into this if we're talking about SaaS? Are there other segments of the organization that we should engage with? We're now looking at expanding the business before we even get to the renewal. And what I can tell you, with the exception of one account that I remember way back when, if an account is expanding, they're likely going to renew. You're going to retain them. It's very rare to find a situation where a company is expanding, they're expanding their business operations with you, and then they decide that they no longer are going to do business. And typically when that happens, it's either because they've had a major change inside their business, maybe an acquisition or they were acquired, or they've had a significant leadership change inside their business. But typically speaking, when we're expanding business, we'll keep moving toward new value points. So let's say value 2 and then value 3. We're starting to see this impact, this change, this thing that's happening inside their organization. If they're expanding, you're likely going to renew. The mistake that I think a lot of people make, and we'll talk about it on this side of the board, the mistake that a lot of people make is they focus so much on retention, and they have separate teams who are focused on retention. And these people act in a mode where you can only retain existing business. So if you're only focused on retention dollars, 100%, you're only going to retain a partial portion of it. If you shift things, and some people are talking about this in net revenue retention or NRR, if you shift and you start thinking about what the add-on business is, now you can take your add-on or expansion business, have that added into your retention business, and really grow business on that side of the equation. Retention is one of those things that will only go backwards. Expansion is something that moves forward. And if we keep our customers moving forward, we're going to put ourselves in a better position. All right, So if we agree that we're going to retain customers through expansion and we're going to accelerate time to value, speed to impact, we're going to focus on those initial value points and get through those, then the next thing that we want to figure out, and this is really important because this is where people who are in customer success type roles or some other roles, they don't think of themselves as sales or revenue people inside an organization. Depending on the complexity of your business, I would suggest that they should be. I'm not a big fan of the use of the word cradle grave because I don't want to see clients die in the process of working with them. But if we are in a situation where we're going to transition over to customer success and not have the customer success work with an account executive, then we've got to look at this a little bit differently. Let's say we do have an account executive involved in it. Actually, let's simplify. Let's say we don't. So your customer success person is responsible for managing the onboarding part of the relationship. That's the first thing they do. Then they start to shift into this idea of everboarding. What happens if we start looking at the engagement that we have with our customers in the context of 90-day sprints? Maybe even 6 2-week sprints inside that 90 days. We're constantly working from A to B to C to D and then resetting from A to B to C to D every 90 days. And at the end of each of those 90 days, we have these business reviews, not these quarterly business reviews where you go in and you say, hey, here's all the cool new things that we're doing in the business. You go in there and you actually review what's happening in their business, what's changed in their business, and then you connect the dots between what's changed in their business and how you might be able to serve them or provide to them as an organization. So when we have our 90-day sprints broken out into these sections and we're constantly moving forward them, then we stack those together and we get ourselves into the position where we're looking at 4 quarterly sprints over an annual term with the customer. At each of these posts, we should be validating validating if there's another group inside the organization where we can grow to. So we start expanding and then we have to rewrite a contract and maybe we extend it for an additional term. But at a minimum, we should be talking to them about budget cycles in that second sprint, that third sprint, so that we're prepared for the next year to grow properly. This is where having a proper sales process inside your customer success, your account manager team, that aligns with your customer acquisition sales process, you're all speaking the same language, becomes really important. There are a lot of people who will push back and say that the sales process post-sale is completely different than the sales process pre-sale. I think they're full of crap. And the reason I think they're full of crap is because I've applied both of them on both sides of them. And when we use the same language inside our organizations, we can communicate better as a team. We'll get into that a little bit later. We'll talk about sales process. Actually, if you are interested in watching a live session on Friday, watch Liz Hyman's SOS podcast, where a couple of folks like me will get on there. And I know that the topic this week is going to be sales process. So getting back to the point, so we are focused on retention through expansion. So we're going to expand our customers, which is ultimately going to lead to retaining those customers. We're going to design in the context of 90-day sprints, break those down into 6 2-week sprints inside the 90-day sprint period, constantly be moving towards speed to impact, time to value, and looking for opportunities to expand the customer. If you do that inside the customers that you're working with, you will increase your renewal rates. You will increase the impact that you have inside those organizations. You will increase the reach that you have inside those organizations. And the other thing that they will do is they will start telling all of their friends about you, and you'll start growing new customers through the success that you have with existing customers. Let's look at this growth challenge through the lens of expanding customers as a way to retain those customers so that when we acquire customers, we keep them and we keep this loop moving forward. It's just a shift in mindset, but when you do it, man, it's amazing how things start to come together. Hope you're having an awesome day. If you know somebody who would find this valuable, please share it with them. If you'd like to see me break down some other stuff on the whiteboard, go a little bit deeper onto some of the stuff, please let me know that as well in the comments. And I would love to hear how you apply this in the work that you do.